2, 1.
Hello, everyone. This is High Point Mayor Jay Wagner. For those who are listening online, coming to you from City Hall, calling to order our special council meeting for our budget work session for May 10th, 2023. We have a quorum here at City Council Chamber. Councilman Britt Moore is here, as am I, and Councilman Jones, Williams, and Councilwoman Peters. So calling the meeting to order, and we'll go ahead and begin. Before we start on our budget work, though, I'm going to recognize Eric Almeida to introduce a new staff member.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Before we get started on budget, I did want to take an opportunity to introduce our new MWBE coordinator. Cynthia Barnes is here, and she has joined us this week, and I'm so happy that she's here and the experience that she brings with us. She was the director of MWB for Guilford County, and prior to that, she was with UNCG for a number of years, and she is very well known and well respected in the space in Guilford County and in North Carolina, so I just wanted to welcome her.
Okay.
Thank you. Great to have you here. Thank you. Okay.
Turn it over to Stephen.
All right. Hello, Stephen.
Hello, good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. We have just kind of some high-level topics, and we're going to go in the weeds a little bit on a couple of things. The high-level topics, just an update on marketing branding funding that was approved at the last council meeting, an opioid funding update, and then a little bit more in the weeds on the proposed fee changes in the proposed budget, as well as a review of the capital improvement plan, and then finally we'll talk about next steps. And so first, discussion on marketing branding funding. The proposed 23-24 budget includes an appropriation of $250,000 toward these efforts. The implementation plan is those four categories: collaboration and brand management, internal communications, external communications, and built environment. A little bit more just what these are. Collaboration and brand management, that's kind of your city departments, logos on shirts, city logo on vehicles, but also collaborating with nonprofits and the community at large. Internal communications, that's more thinking internal within the city of High Point, and so discussing with the citizens and local businesses. External communications would be coordinating things with Visit High Point, and also working to make High Point a center for design and for creatives. And lastly, the built environment. Examples of these is the best way to explain this category. Think murals, signage, the water tower, wayfinding, or public art. And so budgets for these, based on what Civic Brand presented, range from a low end to a high end. Again, $250,000 in the proposed budget. Other ways to fund items, existing departmental budgets, and also items through the regular replacement or maintenance schedule. Moving on to an opioid funds update. The opioid settlement fund was created last June, and annually we're required to make an update on where things stand with it. And so a total of almost $2.4 million will be allocated to the city between 2022 and 2038. Wave 1 totaled a little bit over $1.3 million. Wave 2 was just announced within the past several months, and that's a little bit over $1 million over those length of periods. Received to date $172,000, so it's kind of coming in increments over these 17 and 18-year periods. The following bullets to show how they can be used for programs to help persons with opioid use disorders, co-occurring substance use disorders, or mental health conditions. The city has not determined a specific use at this time.
Is there anything about that that's matching, or is that just a solid number that'll be going to that every year? Is there anything tied to it?
Just
Just a straight out number?
Just the prerequisites on how the funds can be spent.
Okay.
And so now diving a little bit into the weeds on the proposed fee schedule. The proposed budget includes an increase to water sewer rates of 4%. What's driving this is on the operating side, personnel, salaries are increasing, our benefits costs are increasing. Inflationary items, chemicals have increased fairly significantly, other supplies, our annual contracts, And then on the infrastructure side, our PAYGO capital, there's about almost $11 million in the proposed budget for water sewer PAYGO capital, and then debt service on revenue bonds. And the 5-year capital plan includes about $105 million in planned revenue bond projects. And as those are brought forward to council and contracts are issued, finance works on debt issuance schedules, and the increased rates help pay the debt service on those.
Stephen, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
If I remember correctly, the revenue bonds on those go back to the late 90s, early 2000s?
Early 2000s is when we started the revenue bond
Okay.
program.
And that was, and then, of course, it was announced, as I recall, during that time that we would be having these 3 to 5% increases. When do we see that possibly sunsetting, or when do we see ourselves coming down off of that?
I would say that that is not in the current model, which extends roughly 10 to 15 years out. Knowing the cost of capital replacement that we have, you know, we can identify many projects ahead of us. We have a dam replacement on the horizon. We have PFAS, PFOA, filtering coming online. We still don't have our lead and copper implementation plan. We don't know exactly what that's going to cost. And then just the expansion and maintenance of our water plants and our wastewater treatment plants. We have a robust capital schedule ahead of us that we have to fund, as well as, you know, these utility costs, the chemicals and all that are going to keep going up. Customer growth is not organic enough we're not adding enough customers necessarily to just do that on its own.
Have we paid off those initial bonds from 2000, or?
So they're typically 20-year bonds.
Yeah.
So the initial revenue bonds are effectively phasing out, but have been replaced with others along the way.
That's right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Quick question before you, got personnel on that. Is that retention or hiring more?
It would include retention, just average 3% merit, retirement costs, health insurance, dental insurance, kind of all of those.
Understood. Thank you.
A quick note on electric rates. The proposed budget does not include an increase to electric rates. In discussing with Mr. Barrier, he did provide us kind of a comparison on the average monthly bill versus what customers on Duke Energy pay. And so for usage of 1,000 kilowatt hours per month, the average monthly bill for a proposed 10% increase for Duke would be about $124. A High Point Electric customer pays on average about $107, and so that's the difference. Duke Energy has asked for a 17.7% increase. This comparison is assuming that they get a 10% increase. If they got the additional 7.7% on top of that, Duke Energy customers will be paying about $133 or so on a monthly bill, so that'll even widen that gap between what someone on High Point Electric pays versus what someone on Duke Energy pays. Going to the fees on specific departments, under Parks and Recreation, just for competition swimming lane rentals, it just clarifies in the fee schedule that if you make this rental, you'd be getting 6 lanes as opposed to 8, which would allow 2 to remain open for public use. There's no other further change to that fee. On the customer service side, talking with customer service, it appears the last time these fees were updated was about 2005. So a service fee that's after 7 p.m., the labor and costs and transportation has increased, and so this just helps recover some of those costs, similarly to the extra trip fee. On the meter tampering investigation charge, $200 increase to $300. Someone tampers with their meter, this is pretty dangerous, and so the increase is meant to make it a very large deterrent from tampering with your meter, discourage customers from messing with it. If you have issues, to call customer service, them come look at it, and hopefully improve customer safety. And so that's really the basis on that increase there. And then on electric service disconnected at pole, again, this is just a matter to recover costs. These fees are not making or breaking the revenues in the electric fund, but those costs have been increasing, and this is just a matter to help us recover those costs.
Stephen, let me ask you about the pool. if an entity wanted to rent the entire pool for a, you know, a regional swim meet or something, is that still something we do?
I believe that'd probably fall under special events. We can I can check with Recreation to be sure that's still
Yeah.
an option.
I mean, yeah, I don't know that that's out there, but,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that's something that had happened in the past. So I just want to make sure we're still available to be able to do
Yeah,
that.
we'll discuss with Mr. Tillery and provide a follow-up.
All right.
Within the parking fund, proposed change to the daily hourly maximum. And so the hourly rate remains at $1 per hour, but the daily maximum is increased $3 to $10. And then on monthly rentals, it's currently $35 a month. It creates a tiered kind of fee schedule, so the more monthly spaces you had rented, the less per month you would pay per space. This is an effort to help build reserves within the fund, as well as help pay for future capital and maintenance, and make some of these repairs and maintenance and larger capital less reliant on the general fund subsidy. Currently, the general fund subsidizes a little over 51% of the parking fund, and so if they have major capital projects, that's another one of those funding sources for it, and so this would just help alleviate some of those costs from the general fund. In public services, cemeteries, an increase on adult burial open and closes. It's currently $700, going up to $750. Again, similar to a lot of the other fees that are proposed to increase, that's just the cost that we're paying to perform these, and so it helps bring us up closer to what we are paying. And then on open and closed for cremation urns, it's currently $500. However, urns can vary in size, and so the fee schedule is proposed to change to provide a range depending on the size of the urn. Within the solid waste division of public services, an increase to rollout containers, garbage, yard waste, and recycling. Again, this is what solid waste is currently paying when they purchase these to then provide them to citizens. A red box rental, that's a 3-day, think big dumpster. So increase for fuel, labor to get those out to customers. So that's the increase driver there. And then an increase of the solid waste availability fee of $1 per month to $14 a month. And so solid waste has seen more accounts, more miles on equipment, increased fuel costs, increased labor costs, more landfill trips. The cost of doing this business and providing this service has gone up, and this is just a mechanism to help recover some of those costs.
How long did you say the red box rental is again?
3 day.
It's 3 days?
Is that the same charge regardless? I mean, if they need it for a day and call back and we're available, will we go get it sooner?
I'd have to double check with public services on a situation like that, but my understanding you'd have it for the 3 days.
Yeah.
And then if you
Have
did
the
it for an
option to
additional
have
3
it for
days.
3 at 150, but if you wanted it out of your site earlier than that,
I think if you finish
We'll pick it up for free.
at
I do
150.
pay 150.
Got it.
And lastly, the stormwater division of public services, an increase in the billing rate per equivalent residential unit, going from $4 a month to $5 a month. So this is paid by single-family and multifamily residents. They pay 1 ERU per month. Commercial and industrial businesses pay based on their impervious surface area, and so it would just be going up. This is to help for future stormwater improvements. There's also some larger projects in the capital improvement plan that may need a potential debt financing, so this could help pay for the debt service on that. And again, similar to a lot of the other divisions that you're seeing these fee increases, the cost of business has gone up, and it's just a mechanism to help recover some of those costs. We have calculated a monthly impact to the customer, and so we've done it just for water, sewer, solid waste, availability, and stormwater. The other fees are kind of case by case, and so that's why they're not included. And so per public services, the average monthly bill for a water sewer customer is about almost $79.62, and so that's the 4% increase to $82.80, and then a $1 increase on the solid waste availability and the stormwater fee. So monthly impact to the customer, if these fee increases are approved, would be about $5.18. And last section, the capital improvement plan. We saw this slide last week. I'll just reiterate on the general capital of that almost $7 million. About $3 million of that is general fund dollars. Other funds and federal grants are covering the other portion. On the transit side, for the most transit projects, the city pays about 10%, the state pays about 10%, and the feds pick up about 80%. Doesn't work out exactly to that, but our local match for that $3.77 million is $382,000. And then on the stormwater side, of that $7.1 million, $5 million is for a federal grant for stormwater improvements on West Green Drive. So these slides were shown last week. I just kind of want to highlight a couple things on, not going to go project by project, but the ERP upgrade, $1.5 million, $375,000 of that is from the general fund. But since other enterprise funds will benefit from this upgrade, there's kind of a cost sharing among those. Park improvements, parking lots, about the fifth project down, $220,000. This is for parking lot improvements at Goldston Park, Cedro Park, and the Oak Hollow Overlook. The Parks and Recreation Deferred Maintenance Program. This project's on the specifics will vary year by year, just kind of on what deferred maintenance needs to be caught up on. Proposed for FY24 is replacement of the chemical building at Oak Hollow Golf Course and also some plumbing improvements at the Oak Hollow Golf Course clubhouse. And those improvements in future years will kind of vary based on need. The library chiller replacement, that's reached its end of life, and so that needs replacing. The museum HVAC and envelope improvements. The other improvements besides the HVAC include the roof and the roll-up door. This is the first of 2 years of phased-in funding. The total project funding is about $1 million. However, the museum has applied for a grant that can help alleviate some of those costs. We're hopeful, I believe, by the fall to receive word on whether we'll receive that grant or not. On the local match for NCDOT funded projects, this is specifically 2 sidewalk projects, one on North University from Green to MLK, and the other on East Chester from Johnson to University. Of that $905,000, $113,000 is local. The rest is funded by a federal grant. And similarly, on the CMAQ traffic signal timing, CMAQ is congestion mitigation air quality. This is for an analysis of the signals at our major corridors, and of that $1.4 million, local match, local funding in the budget, $196,000, the remaining covered by a federal grant. Moving on to water sewer, those first kind of half of those projects, automation replacement of generators, obsolete water and sewer lines, water system improvements, sewer system improvements, these are kind of recurring capital within the water sewer capital plan. The demolition of the Ward water tank, I'll just note that that's a structural and safety issue for the tank that was abandoned in 2019. Burton Road, that's the water sewer side. That's part of the Burton Road bond project for transportation. The Arc Flash project, that's for future plant safety. And I'll note this first project here, the SCADA computer and server, that would be at the west side, east side, and Ward plants. And so that would replace that software and upgrade all the computers that are running on that software. So total, and this is just PAYGO for water sewer, just slightly under $11 million.
Back up one slide.
Yes, sir.
To anybody here who might know, how much distance do we get out of $3 million to replace obsolete water and sewer lines? I mean, I know it depends on the street, but ballparking it.
I don't know, Mayor. We'll get your response to that. Depends on the size of the line.
Yeah, I know.
So, I can tell you not as much as you used to.
Well, I figured that.
We'll get you numbers.
Okay, I'm just wondering, I mean, if y'all have the actual projects
Is,
picked out, that's fine, if you just want to tell me.
go ahead, Monica.
Well, in line with what Mayor Wagner just said, can we get a list of the obsolete sewer projects that are listed at 1.5 million? Do we have a list of
We can
that?
get the ones that are included?
Yeah.
We can get you the ones that are
Okay,
included.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is the demolition on Ward Street scheduled?
I'd have to check with Mr. Stone. Probably waiting for funding to be officially approved before they move forward on that. Moving on to electric projects, similarly to water sewer, kind of about the first half of those projects are just kind of regular recurring capital for electric. The Eastchester and Fairfield transformer replacements, those have each reached their end of service life. The NCDOT Eastchester widening, that's going to be a phased-in funding, and so you'll see allocations of funds for the next several years until that project begins.
Is that Eastchester and Wendover?
It is near that end of
Yeah.
Eastchester. I can pull the specifics.
So is this money just being set aside and held?
Yes, sir.
That,
From Hickswood Road to Gallimore Dairy Road.
yeah, okay. That's what I thought.
I'll note the substation security, $500,000. There were several incidents involving electric substations over the past year, and so this is just in anticipation of potential new rules and regulations providing security at these substations. We kind of don't know what exactly that may look like, but we want to be ready for it. So total electric totaling $9.85 million for their pay-go capital for next year.
Mr. Manager, could we get the list as well on the planned areas to use the outdoor and street lighting? Yeah.
We can provide that.
Looking at solid waste, those first two projects, the landfill development land purchase and the Kersey Valley Post-Closure Reserve, those are annual funds and they're funded by the Post-Closure Reserve Fund. Ongoing maintenance at the MRF, that's ongoing capital for major maintenance needs there. The row turner for Ingleside, this is a piece of equipment that helps turn over the materials at the composting facility. It's supposed to improve the efficiency in the production of compost. And then asphalt underlayment at Ingleside and Kersey Valley. Total solid waste projects slightly over $1.02 million. Looking at transit, and so these are the total amounts for these projects, but I'll note the first four, our match is 10%. The 5 Points Transfer Hub, this is to build a passenger waiting facility. On the transit maintenance facility renovation, this would provide a parts room, general storage, and additional 2 offices. The transit fleet expansion vehicles, this is for smaller vehicles for some of the connector routes. And then a facility generator just to have as a backup in case of power issues. So of that $3.77 million, $382,000 is our local end. And then lastly, on stormwater, routine stormwater projects, these are just projects that may come up throughout the year, provides kind of a pot of funds to draw on. The Country Club Rockford Dover Kensington project, this will provide flood mitigation as well as stream channel stabilization. And then I noted earlier that $5 million federal grant for stormwater infrastructure improvements at West Green Drive. So that brings that stormwater capital total to $7.1 million.
Didn't we already do a bunch of work? Rockford Country Club, Kensington, and I'm thinking 6 or 8 years ago.
We did some on Kensington. There was a larger project that just completed down here. But as for the details on the others, we'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. 'Cause I mean, it was a big deal there for a while. I want to say it was between 2014 and 2017, we were talking about that a lot. You remember that, Chris?
I do.
Okay. That one's rising from the dead, I think. Go ahead.
So that's the end of the capital detail and the end of the deep dive of the slides. Just in terms of next steps, there's a public hearing scheduled for Monday at the City Council meeting. The plan for the work session on Thursday, May 18th would be to have Visit High Point and the Market Authority come and present their budgets as they annually do. And then we have the Wednesday, May 24th work session slotted as if necessary, depending on the direction of council. Happy to answer any further questions you may have.
Folks, the floor is open if you got questions about the budget.
I got a couple. and we probably hadn't heard anything like this since my predecessor's predecessor. I wanted to see if we can do an evaluation on council's base pay as it stands. I remember, I can tell you now, it hadn't increased in the 9 years, almost 9 years I've been here, which is fine. But I would like to see that reevaluated or looked at. And possibly, if it's possible, that something's in place going forward, that it is at least looked at every term. Because you're talking 4-year changes.
To speak to that, to some degree, I know typically we go through and we evaluate, a third of our employee workforce, and there are cities that we benchmark ourselves against. We do have some of the comparative information as it relates to council compensation. I think the last time an adjustment was made was in 2008. So it has been a while since we've formally brought any information back to the board, but we can do that based on those 13, I think it's 13 different municipalities that we benchmark ourselves against, and we can do that comparative analysis for salaries and provide that to the group.
Thank you. The other piece is, we've been in some discussion about and I don't know if this is the right place to talk about it, but the mentorship coordinator's position, working with High Point Partners. I forwarded some information towards staff to kind of take a look at it, and for us to look at what the next steps are. That's been a project for myself and the mayor for a number of, we actually made great progress, and hello COVID, that just kind of ended that thing real quick. But I would like to revisit that. I think that'll be essential going forward, as we've got so many different nonprofits and local groups that were requesting this help with this particular area. So that's my 2 cents right now.
Is that something that the council would like to see as part of the operating budget, or is that something that would be evaluated with our ARPA funds that we have, or kind of what's the pleasure of the board?
I am okay at being discussed with the ARPA funds.
Okay.
Because it's something that I think can be a launching pad for that position, possibly handled outside of house, and managed with one of the organizations that actually we worked with before we had the stoppage of COVID.
We have the proposal that was shared. If you like, we can prepare that to come before finance and have that heard there, and we could allocate the funding to that at that time.
That works for me.
Is that the pleasure of the board?
Yes.
Does that need to be in the motion or no?
Or Madam Attorney, we want that in form of a motion to take it to finance, or we would bring it there and they would vote on it there?
Okay.
Okay, we'll handle it that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
I came in late, so forgive me. This is Councilman Jefferson. I saw where $250,000 is being allocated for a 5 Points transfer hub. Can I just get a little bit of clarity about that? I know I've heard about this potential project happening. I want to get a little bit of clarity about how that $250,000 is going to do. I think what I saw on the line item construction, but I'm curious about that. Maybe I'm missing something, because that seems like
And my understanding of this project, this is the first of 2 years of funding. The $250,000 would be mainly for land and right-of-way costs.
Okay.
And then a larger planned appropriation for year 2 of the capital plan to cover the construction.
Okay.
Is this to coordinate with the park buses? Is that the plan, Cyril?
This has been talked about even before I got on council. I remember the first time hearing about it was early on in this tenure. Jason Ewing was involved in a number of those conversations.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Michael's got some insight on it. But I do think it has something to do with the city in part, and maybe some collaboration. Because the goal, I think, is that we can connect a little bit better to North High Point, where some of those jobs and things are at, as opposed to so much of right now, to come back to any connector, you have to come all way back into
All the way
downtown.
downtown, yeah.
The goal, I think, is to come back into 5 Points with some of those connectors, and then quarterback out from there.
Yeah.
The extent of parts involvement, I wouldn't know it.
Okay.
I wouldn't know it.
And just a little bit more, looking at the project description, similar to how you explained it, Councilman Jefferson, just kind of several routes converging, and then, currently that's, with all those routes converging, you kind of need to build a little bit of infrastructure out to, plan for that if there's more people waiting for buses and going in different directions. And so that would be the second year funding, which would be about $1.5 million total. Our share would be $150,000 in year 2.
Yeah, and it's going to be asked, and I think I know the answer, but in terms of location, that city staff is working on that, has that been confirmed?
Not sure. I don't think so, but we'll confirm.
I have to go through the process of that. Yeah, and then I think the other thing, and I think I remember when Ms. Wines kind of talked about this, it's not every bus that goes through there, right? I think it's most of those ones that it makes sense for how you connect from North High Point to various spots and where it shoots out to. So I think the great thing about this is we've been hearing for a while, how do we connect more folks to jobs? And in North High Point, there's just so much development, and that's great. And then how do we ensure that within our core for those who need access to public transit, that they'll be able to get there? So I'm excited that this first step is being taken, and as we learn more and confirm more details, I think the public's going to be really interested to continue to hear about that too.
If I may. So today I'm wearing my water sewer hat, CWNS. But anyway, thank y'all. Y'all have done such a great job on the budget. But so I asked for the list of the obsolete sewer lines that was in here, but I also noticed on page 225 is the water and sewer raise grant. I'm wondering, I know that it does some water and sewer utility on M. I'm just wondering if that includes anything on West Green, because also on page 307 and 309, we also have 2 stormwater projects on West Green and Jacobs Place, and I'm just wanting to see if we can somehow make sure all those kind of work together in tangent so that we're
Coordinating.
Yes.
The coordination of
absolutely.
the projects.
Yes.
We'll evaluate that.
Okay, thank you.
At the time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we go back to the screen where I guess that covered like roads and paving of roads? Do we have anything like that? I'm looking at 2 different things at the same time.
Nothing in the capital plan for repaving of streets. There is money in the operating budget in the streets maintenance division for the repaving of streets. About $3 million.
Would you be interested in seeing like the pavement condition reports to understand what
Actually,
streets are being planned?
Something really simple, just a question. Because we used to kind of look at our projects about saying, okay, this amount of dollars cover 2 lanes for X amount of miles versus this amount of money covers the same for 4 lanes versus, just I think something like that just kind of puts it in easier perspective for us to kind of look and see what we're looking at for.
You want to know how many miles are being paved based on what's in our budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We can get that.
That's a better way. That's a better way to articulate it. Thank you.
I love how our city manager reads our minds. That's a great city manager. Yay.
I think she's been asked these questions.
I love it.
Perfect. Yeah.
Anyone else with questions for staff?
I do have another question, and this will probably come up in a future session. So much of, going back to public transportation and transit, I think the last time we had an update at a committee meeting, probably was P&L, and it's been a couple months where we talked about some of the issues we're still navigating with hiring drivers, what our insurance is currently, things of that nature. There's just some challenges we've been trying to overcome. Does this budget account for some of what we think are remedies to those challenges, or?
It does. Right.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. Damon Duquesne, Assistant City Manager. Councilmember Jefferson, in response to that, the short answer is yes. We have done sort of an interim evaluation on the salary side of things. And those impacts can be borne, those changes can be borne in this budget as far as salaries are concerned. We're actively working with GTCC on some programs to help, grow future employees, whether they're drivers or mechanics or otherwise. And we've expanded the way that we search for talent, and had a really good response recently. So we're hopeful that here in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we could knock our vacancies down on the driver's side by 6 or 7 new employees. Very
That'd be
good
awesome.
qualified applicants, and those interviews are going to be conducted here very shortly.
That's great news.
And I will say, when they did the analysis, they did a regional analysis of our salaries, looking at the jurisdictions that we were competing with, then also looking at the PART system as well. So we want to make sure that the salaries that we were paying were competitive with all 3 of those systems.
Kind of piggybacking on this question, I think one of the challenges we had before COVID and salary and calendar, I keep saying that word, were the requirements of insurance when it comes to drivers, that they, what was it, 5 years?
3.
Was it 3 years?
It was 2, right?
2.
2.
Is it 2?
Yes, sir.
Well,
It was.
It
We've,
was 2 years, but not anymore. Then we made the switch.
we did, with
Criteria.
many thanks to the finance department for helping us out.
That was a concern for a while, that we, when you were trying to compete with CDL drivers who could drive short-term, big-dollar jobs versus, public transportation. So, and one of the hindrance was insurance. So that's good to know. I think hopefully the public will pick up on that.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Okay, last chance. All right, we'll look forward to holding our public hearing on Monday then, getting feedback from the public, and then, I guess, following up on the 18th. Hopefully, we won't have too much to address on the 18th, but we do need to get the reports from those 2 entities before we proceed, but thank you. Y'all done a great job.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, there's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion, final thoughts before the vote?
So sorry, when you talked about Market Authority and Visit High Point, it just made me remember, are we hearing from Ford High Point sometime soon, just as an update?
We usually hear an update for them I think it was near the end of the year. They don't present their budget as part of this process, but we can have them come do an update for council.
We've got them in for another $250,000?
We do.
Could they not maybe pop in and do it as part of the strategic plan program that I find myself supporting every first of the month?
Yeah, I know there's several of y'all who are on the,
Yeah, we can find a time to schedule them to do an update for council. I can check to see if there's any availability on the 18th, and if they're not available that day, then we'll find a time for them to come in, just to give an update.
that'd be fantastic.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All in favor of adjourning, please